believe me, sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well, lots of ground to cover today. I'm going to be discussing ambition, corruption in royal circles, and as it affects royalty and other matters as well. So without further ado, I'm going to plunge in after making the observation that it was a welcome thing to see King Charles and Queen Camilla on their visit really, but primarily his, to the University College Hospital Macmillan Cancer Clinic. It's good that he is using his cancer to shine a light on cancer treatment in this country and what it is like to be suffering from cancer. It has to be said, Britain has one of the worst records in the civilized world for the treatment of cancer. I say that with no pleasure, and I also make the observation that at some point all the political parties are going to have to wake up to the fact that they need, as a matter of duty to the people of this country, to get behind revamping the National Health Service. At the moment, it is not fit for purpose unless you are seriously ill, and even then, if you suffer from certain conditions such as cancer, your chances of survival in this country are lower than in many other countries. I make that point for what it's worth, and now plunge in with what Brenda G says. Do you think all the publicity gotten from this Nigerian trip for Meghan is to deflect that she that she wasn't invited to the Met Gala on May the 6th in the USA? I understand it is quite the exciting event by invitation only. Well. I'm sure that had Meghan been asked to the Met Gala, she would have made absolutely sure that she showed up in one of her ill-fitting dresses. But Anna Wintour has not condescended to ask such a luminary as Meghan, because, of course, Anna Wintour and all of the other attendees at the Met Gala are most likely jealous that Meghan would eclipse them the way Catherine and William were jealous that she and Harry were going to eclipse the Cambridges as they then were. But it's interesting that you bring up such trivialities, because my understanding is that these are the things that actually motivate Meghan and determine a lot of her actions. But you see, in her mind, she has actually trumped Anna Wintour, because Anna Wintour can't go on a quasi-royal pseudo-state visit to Nigeria, because Anna Wintour isn't 43% Nigerian. Not, of course, that anybody in their right mind would believe that Meghan was either. However, so Daphne Germain Ribble says, so Harry doesn't feel safe in the UK, but is going to Nigeria, a country riddled with gangs, kidnappers, and crime. He really is dim-witted, and so is she. They show their ignorance at every turn. Keep the videos coming, Lady C. They are so informative. Be blessed. Thank you very much for that, Daphne Germain Ribble. Well, I hate to tell you, I do not entirely agree with your statement. And I don't mean to be needlessly disputatious. Harry may not be clever, but he's clever enough to know that Meghan is cleverer than he is. And he knows and respects it, and he admires her for it. And he is happy to put his fate in her hands. Now, I'm going to be very careful how I put this. Their game plan has been revealed to me. Now, you tell me if this doesn't sound like their game plan. And it is amazing that nobody has hitherto alighted upon it. But here goes. And I'm not going to tell you how I have arrived at recognition that this game plan actually is 99% accurate. The fact that the country is riddled with gangs and kidnapping, etc., will make or should make no difference to Meghan and Harry, because they will be accorded state protection. That's the first thing. But the main thing is their goal, their ultimate goal, I should say, because they evidently have a series of goals, but where this pseudo-royal state visit is concerned. One is to make money with Nigeria and Nigerians, and Nigeria is one of the richest and most corrupt states in Africa, which tells you in the world. But they will be able to hopefully cut deals and milk their connections. Now, they have some fairly interesting Nigerian connections, but we're not going to get there right yet, because what they are actually doing, and this is the game plan, is laying the ground, and they have clearly been doing this for some time. They are laying the ground so that when King Charles is no longer here, that they will become the effective heads of the Commonwealth, with Harry being nominated at this point as head of the Commonwealth, and with Meghan's ambitions, political as well as other. Who knows? She could actually be thinking, oh, well, I can pip him at the post down the line, and maybe I'm going to become the head of the Commonwealth. Her Royal Highness Princess Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, President of the United States of America, and Empress of Rubbish. Well, but that's the ambition, because the headship of the Commonwealth is an elective position. And Prince Charles was elected while the Queen was alive to succeed her. There is no successor to King Charles at the moment. And Meghan and Harry have very cleverly played the race card, which makes it more difficult for King William to become head of the Commonwealth when he has a racist wife. Who's the next best bet? Princess Meghan and Prince Harold. Do you begin to see the logic behind it all? Do you begin to see the forward planning? Do you begin to see why Nicky Pretty was so right about Meghan's long-term conniving? That's why Catherine was accused of racism. And accusing Charles of racism was simply to deflect away, I am told, from the real purpose, which was to prevent William from becoming head of the Commonwealth. So doing Catherine alone would have been too obvious, but doing Charles, which nobody would believe, and doing Catherine as well would poison the pond. Very interesting, very devious, very clever. And let's see if they get away with it. Also, Meghan has been playing the Nigerian card because Nigeria is very rich and it's very corrupt. And she has alighted upon the fact, I gather, that one way of making a shed load of money certainly and quickly without having to be lectured to by such impertinent organizations as Spotify and Netflix and all those other ghastly people who don't understand how great she is and how always right she is and how wrong they are, is to have a few connections in Nigeria. My brother Mickey, when he sat his dinners at Gray's Inn, one of his great friends, whose name I'm not going to mention, as you will discover why in half a second, who ended up having a very eminent position in Nigeria and whose father was Chief Justice of Nigeria at the time. He said to me when I suggested going to Nigeria, he said, you'd be crazy to go. It's the only country on earth that you actually have to bribe your way into as well as out of. So, well, there are Nigerian connections that have been floating around on the surface of the Meghan pond for some while. Meghan Harriman is one, something of a race baiter, and Dr. Shola is another, an archetypal race baiter. Do you begin to see now why playing the race card might have actually been clever? Maybe she's not as stupid as everybody thinks she is, but clearly not so clever as to not be seen through. But that, of course, is a problem with people who are very clever. There's always somebody cleverer who can see through you. It's the slime of the slug as it slithers across the slab on the garden, leaving evidence of its origins and its destination. Cranky Auntie Linda says, thank you, Lady C, for your kind sharing of the background stories of so many people that pop up, of which, being American, I have no knowledge about, but find them fascinating. I do have a question. I thought that Nigeria was a country, a location, and is made up of many different tribes or ethnic groups? If so, people who claim to be Nigerian do not exist. I, as an American, can say I am from the USA location, but my heritage, genetic composition, is Belgian and Hungarian. When will Meghan disclose her actual African heritage? Kisses to you and your family. She has disclosed it. She has said it is Nigerian. And you're absolutely right. Saying you are Nigerian is as preposterous as saying that you are genetically American or indeed genetically Jamaican. I'm Jamaican. I'm not black, not even brown, but I'm Jamaican. There's no such thing as an ethnic Jamaican. There's such a thing as an ethnic American. The Native Americans are ethnically American. No one else is. When will she come clean? Well, that's very optimistic of you, my dear, to ask the question, because Meghan comes clean with desires couched as fact. The discovery of her Nigerian origins is as convenient and most likely timed to match when she discovered that Hollywood wasn't going to work out quite as well as she thought. Spotify had turned out to be really hard pickings. Can you imagine? They actually expect us to work for the money. I mean, who do these people think they are? Don't they realize that I'm a proud, confident woman of suits, colour and star of suits, and also that I'm a royal duchess and I'm a princess. I'm Princess Meghan. And you're a royal prince. I think she discovered she was Nigerian at the precise moment that she decided, actually, Nigeria is a good starting point and it's got huge udders financially and I'm going to be able to milk it for all it's worth. So what better thing to do than create an identity that is Nigerian? Clever. Tacky, but clever. Sharon Schmidt says, prepare for a New York moment repeating itself to show Britain they are in need of more safety. I think you mean security. How is going to a country like this safe to travel? There are warnings involving travel. Would not put it past them to do a stunt. Don't be so suspicious. Sharon Schmidt. What would ever make you think that Harry and Meghan would pull a stunt? Especially after the trauma of that 80-mile-an-hour car chase for 2 hours in Midtown Manhattan. And you notice not one photograph or video footage to show for it. Anyway, there is very much mental illness at play. That's one way of putting it. And why the press across the pond and in the US doesn't see this, I have no faith in their reporting. They're not interested in speaking the truth. They are interested in milking the situation. It is the courtesy of one milker for another. The press are milking the situation just as how Meghan and Harry are milking and creating different situations which they will milk and the press will milk along with them. The press are in the business of reporting upon news, and Harry and Meghan are in the business of creating news. It is a mutually advantageous and symbiotic relationship. Well, what is, aside from earning shed loads of money and aside from ultimately being appointed as the head of the Commonwealth, who knows, by the time this is all finished, they might even be appointed as the joint heads of the Commonwealth. Depends how long Charles hangs around for, let's put it that way. In the meantime, can you imagine if there was a problem? They would be able to say, you see, we've not been protected. We needed security and you didn't provide it for us. We need IPP status. Of course, the reality is that any royal on an official visit would have joint security with the state concerned. Harry is no longer officially royal, but depend on it, the security issues will be dealt with as if he were still a royal prince functioning within the royal fold as a working royal. Will there be another New York car chase or a version of it? I don't think that's going to be possible because you see, Nigeria has wide roads and they're not going to be able to be hemmed in for 2 hours going 2 miles an hour and claiming to go 80. And there will doubtless be video footage to prove the lie. So there's not going to be that. Might there be an attempted kidnapping? Well, that's what people have been mooting. I don't think so. That would reflect very adversely upon the competency of the Nigerian state. And I don't think they're in any rush to embarrass themselves to facilitate Meghan and Harry's ambitions to be returned to IPP status. So, I think if Meghan and Harry are as clever as they think they are, this visit will go off without a hitch. They're not going to pull a stunt such as they pulled in New York, because they will realize that that would poison the pond for future dealings with the Nigerians and the Nigerian state and the various entities that we will meet through various ministers. And I'm not for a second implying that any of them would be corrupt and that they would end up getting into commercial deals that they shouldn't. No, never would I suggest that as a possibility. But I'm sure that they will all end up making or trying to make a lot of money. So you see, Gloria Steinem and Ms. Magazine had served its purpose. It created the platform for Meghan to be given an award and for Meghan to then be able to milk the situation to try to enhance the possibilities of a return to IPP status. That's not going to happen this time. So I do not think, if they have any sense of logic and reason, that they will pull a stunt like that. Having said that, you never know with people like that what they're capable of. So, but I think they have their eye firmly on the titular headship of the Commonwealth through Meghan's little bit of black blood which she is going to milk for all it's worth, as she has been doing for some considerable length of time now. And she has created a dynamic of being under attack by mean white people. That's resonant in certain quarters, in certain Commonwealth countries. Cynical? Yes. But they hope effective. EM6577 says, Dear Lady C, if someone was proven to never have been capable of being pregnant, but had used situations alleging they were to either evade situations or garner attention or favours, would this be a criminal offence? Just a hypothetical question, of course. Well, I will take it at face value. Yes, it is a hypothetical question, and it could apply to anyone who came up with such a scheme. And such a scheme would actually be a criminal offence in the United Kingdom. Because if there were a financial advantage to it, it would be called obtaining a pecuniary advantage by deception, which is a serious criminal offence. Rather more broadly speaking, it would be fraud. Would it be easily provable? Depending on the desire of the authorities to prove it, it would be fairly easily provable. There have been cases recently of girls who pretended to be boys, who then achieved Congress, and they have been done for deception and assault. But if it were somebody high profile and it suited the authorities to prosecute them, for instance, if it were a reality TV star who had done it and got away with it with a favoured, say, football star that people admired, she'd be done quicker than you could say boo. But if it were, say, a well-placed person of colour, would it be feasible to do anything but ignore it? I think not. I think there's no way anything would happen. Why? Because everybody is too nervous of the colour card. And if it involved somebody in the aristocracy, it would be done quicker than you could say boo. But if it involved a member of a reigning royal family, would it be done? I don't think so. Because people wouldn't want to upset the apple cart, people being the Department of Public Prosecutions, for starters, and the mainstream media, who have a symbiotic relationship with the royal family, and they use the royal family for content, and the royal family uses them for publicity. So I hope that answers the question. I think I'm sounding extremely realistic. I hope you don't think I'm sounding cynical, because if you do, in this instance, cynicism would accord very closely with reality. Anna Bernadette says, we're not in the age of the Windsors. The internet has changed the game. People want the king to protect his citizens against the harm the Harkles are causing. It will not stop until the king stands up to them. Well, Thank you for that. No, it won't stop. It won't stop until they are definitively blocked. And there is no will to definitively block them because there is a school of thought at the palace and in the establishment that for all the damage Harry and Meghan are doing, blocking them would possibly damage the institution even further than not blocking them. Doubtless, once the palace wakes up to the fact that Harry and Meghan are intent on becoming the heads of the Commonwealth, they might even take the view, oh well, they're still members of our royal family, so we can live with that. And they will think, oh, we'll somehow be able to spin it to our advantage. Because that's one of the realistic approaches that pragmatists will take. There's also the fear of blocking them in terms of the backlash from people of colour in this country and all over the Commonwealth, which I think is not as well founded as the palace thinks it is. Because I think, yes, there would be a backlash from a small element of the population, but the sounder element of the population, I do not think would have any backlash because they already recognize and disapprove of what Harry and Meghan are up to. But that's my opinion. Of course, it's not my crown, so my opinion is of no consequence where they are concerned. Jennifer Kirchhoff says, as an anesthesiologist, doubtless American, you would not be encouraged to take a bath after an epidural for fear of a risk of infection. The whole thing is patently absurd, quite frankly, pathological, and only a complete moron would believe them. And Marissa Woods says, bathing with an epidural line attached to your spine is not allowed. It would introduce bacteria to your cerebral spinal fluid, resulting in brain inflammation or infection. Also, being numb from the waist down while in a tub filled with water could cause drowning, especially if the mother is unassisted while her husband is unavailable to hold her up because he's high on gas. The gas being puffed by anyone other than the patient is outrageously illegal in big block capitals. The doctor and hospital could be fined or lose their licenses. And Linda DeCosta says, Lady C, that's where I draw the line. After an epidural, you can do bollocks for 12 to 24 hours. Medical fact. I had 2. Well, the fact of the matter is, Harry and Meghan's accounts, primarily his actually, of the performance for the birth of both those children is so incredible that I, for one, cannot believe a word that they have said. Bouncing on balls, leaving a hospital and going home 2 hours after a birth that was done with an epidural, etc., etc. But what can I say? Not everything is revealed in the fullness of time. And now I am going to end with some rather distressing news, because the only correct and legally acknowledged heir to the non-ancient throne of Romania, namely Prince Paul of Romania, who is an old friend of mine. We were all in Malta on the weekend for his investiture as the Grand Master of the Orthodox version of the Knights of Malta, which was started in Russia after the expulsion of the order from Malta in the early 1800s. And it was ultimately disbanded and reformed, and Grand Duke Alexander Mikhailovich was the head of it in the last century, and his cousin, Grand Duke Vladimir Kirillovich, was asked to be head, and he declined because his position was somewhat sketchy. And this was in the days of communism, and his right to claim to be the true Tsar of Russia was disputed by much of the rest of the Russian imperial family. And he wisely decided not to take up the invitation. And until his death, there was therefore nobody who was the Grand Master. And there has been a substitute Grand Master who I had the pleasure of meeting, who had handed over on Saturday evening to Prince Paul of Romania, who is a lineal legitimate descendant of Tsar Alexander II, as indeed was Grand Duke Vladimir Kirillovich, because Paul's great-grandmother, Queen Marie of Romania, was the daughter of Grand Duchess Maria Alexandrovna, who was the daughter of Tsar Alexander II. And of course, Paul is Orthodox, and he has had a lot of trouble with the very corrupt judiciary or elements within Romania. Has a very mixed judiciary. Some of it is correct, some of it is corrupt. And notwithstanding the fact that a superior court, the Supreme Court of Romania, acknowledges his rights, a lower court, a magistrate's court in Brasov, enacted really a trumped up series of charges against him. And I am going to read out, if I can find it, a newspaper report. Prince Paul was convicted in December 2020 at the Brasov Court of Appeal of buying influence and complicity in the crime of abuse of office against the public interest. He was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. The court found that between 2006 and 2013, he illegally claimed the right to land, including the Snyargov Forest and the Basenasa Royal Farm, an upmarket area near Bucharest, to which he had no right of ownership. Well, that is, of course, at variance with the findings of the Portuguese, the French, the British, and the Romanian courts as well, that he is the rightful, legitimate heir of his grandfather, King Carol II. And as such, he has, I forget whether it's 62 or 67% of, he is entitled to 62 or 67%, I think it must be 67%, of all of King Carol's assets. And King Carol never abdicated, for what that's worth. He was supplanted by his son King Michael in 1940, when he was hounded out of the country by Adolf Hitler as a result of refusing to give up his Jewish mistress, Elena Lupescu. But he never abdicated, and he never waived his rights to his properties. And restitution has been granted, and Michael's eldest daughter, Margarita, who claims to be the custodian of the crown, that has no legal validity. King Michael abdicated not once, but twice, for himself and his descendants. He, therefore, has never had a right to reclaim the crown, nor does any of his descendants. Not one of them has the right to claim the crown. But because Margarita is married to a former Securitate operative called something like Dragu or Radu, something. Anyway, something. It's not even worth remembering his name, but certainly worth remembering his status. And they have been, with a recent Romanian government, they are evidently in tight control of all the funds, notwithstanding the fact that Paul is entitled by law in several European countries, including Romania, which is also part of the European Union and is therefore bound by human rights acts, etc., but is ignoring all of them as it prosecutes Paul for a business deal which involved property that was rightfully his. And the Supreme Court of Romania has confirmed that he is the heir, and he is the heir by descent to the majority interest in the estate. And I think one of the technicalities, if I'm not mistaken, that the Romanians have used is that between 2006 and 2012, because Romania had not yet acknowledged his right, which the Supreme Court did in 2012, to being the majority owner of all of these properties, that he was illegally claiming the right to land, which, he had the right to claim to the land, and also it is not against the law in any country, including Romania, to sell a claimed interest in something, whether you own it or not. As long as you have a claim to it, you are by law, various European laws, allowed to sell your interest in it. And if it turns out that your interest is not acknowledged, the loss is to the people to whom you sold it. It's not to the state. But the Romanian government has been claiming that this cost the state 145 million euros. 135 million euros of royal farmlands and 10 million euros of the forest. Well, since the land is now acknowledged to have been rightfully King Carol's, and Paul, by descent, is his lawful heir, including by various wills, incidentally, of King Carol and his widow, Princess Elena. It doesn't matter whether the Romanian state acknowledged his right at the time. By now acknowledging that the right, which they did in 2012, it is retroactive. So there was no crime committed. And the French state has confirmed it because Paul was accosted in France and he was arrested under a European Arrest Warrant. And it went to court in France, and the French threw it out and refused to extradite him. And I would sincerely hope that the Maltese authorities throw it out as well, and that they do not prove to be Mickey Mouse operators who collude in injustice, because it has been found by the French courts and is patently a political matter to prevent Prince Paul from gaining access to that which the Portuguese government, the French government, the English government, and the Romanian government have confirmed is his property. Yet Margarita controls and has access to all of it. There is corruption, but it's not Paul's corruption. It is those elements of the Romanian state that are still functioning as if the Securitate and Ceausescu was still in power. And I have already been in touch with the Minister for Justice in Malta to draw his attention to the fact. I did it on Monday morning. Paul was arrested on Sunday afternoon, and I did it on Monday morning without consulting anybody. As soon as I heard he was arrested, I promptly got in touch with the Minister of Justice and pointed out that this is well known to be a political matter. And it would be the height of injustice for Paul to be extradited to serve a prison sentence that is at the moment being dismantled in any event, but he would be thrown into prison nevertheless, and he has no business being in prison. I know who has business being in prison, but it's definitely not Paul. And now I'm going to read out a statement on behalf of Paul from his defense team. It's dated the 29th of April, and the locus was Valletta, Malta. Prince Paul Philippe is determined more than ever to prove his innocence. Yet again, and to leave no stone unturned to unearth the corruption being perpetrated by his political enemies in Romania. In pursuance of the European Arrest Warrant issued by Romania yesterday, Prince Paul Philip cooperated fully with the Malta police, who were tasked with enforcing the said European Arrest Warrant to such an extent from the preliminary investigations carried out by the Malta police that the Malta police determined that Prince Paul Philip was being truthful and acting in good faith. In today's sitting in front of the duty magistrate in Malta, the magistrate made it very clear that at this stage the law obliged it to merely verify the existence of a European arrest warrant in connection with a person positively identified by the police without entering into the merits of the request. It will be up to the Court of Magistrates in the next sitting in the next few days to delve into all the arguments which Prince Paul Philip will be bringing forward to reiterate his innocence, something which has been already confirmed by the French Court of Appeal, the French Court of Cassation, and Interpol. In fact, on the 29th of November 2023, the Paris Court of Appeal rejected Romania's European arrest warrant and refused to extradite Prince Paul Philip of Romania to serve a prison term of 3 years, 4 months arising from a 17th December 2020 criminal conviction. The French court found that Romania denied Prince Paul a fair trial, due process, and an impartial tribunal in a decision that violated his human rights and was politically motivated. It was the first time France rejected a sister EU country's European arrest warrant on substantive grounds. The historic French decision cited a March 2023 decision by Interpol deleting its arrest notice called a diffusion and instructing all its national bureaus not to take any action to arrest Prince Paul. In fact, every European court to consider Romania's extradition requests arising from the 17th December 2020 conviction, including courts in Belgium, Greece, and Cyprus, has denied those requests. Prince Paul is confident that Malta will now follow suit and soundly reject Romania's illegal efforts to imprison him. Every court that has considered the issue over the last 6 decades has concluded that Prince Paul and his father are legitimate heirs of King Carol II, including courts in Portugal, the United Kingdom, France, the European Court of Human Rights, and ironically, the Romanian High Court of Cassation and Justice. In a decision announced in November 2021, Romania's High Court reversed the conviction of Robert Rosu, Prince Paul's co-defendant and former lawyer. The High Court found that Rosu lacked criminal intent because he simply advanced good faith legal arguments that Prince Paul was entitled to the claimed properties. At this point, let me interject and say, one of the charges against Paul was that he appointed one of Romania's top lawyers to advise and represent him, and that was influence peddling. Do you see the totally grotesque, corrupt, and abusive way in which the Romanian Court of Cassation in Brasov has gone about this matter? Let me continue to read. And I'm going to repeat the last sentence. The High Court of Romania found that Rousseau lacked criminal intent because he simply advanced good faith legal arguments that Prince Paul was entitled to the claimed properties. Based on that reasoning, Prince Paul is innocent, since he certainly had the right to rely on his lawyer's advice. Although the High Court had a statutory duty to consider whether its reasoning to acquit Rousseau applied to Prince Paul, it did not. In fact, the conviction and Romania's efforts to extradite Prince Paul are the latest and most despicable efforts in a 100-year campaign to deny Prince Paul's side of the family of their rightful inheritance. While Prince Paul's uncle, ex-King Michael, and his daughters have been awarded hundreds of millions of euros in King Carol II's properties, Prince Paul's efforts to reclaim his share have been blocked for decades. After Prince Paul made progress in reclaiming Carol II's property in non-Romanian countries, Romania's High Court overturned his acquittal of all serious charges and sentenced him to prison. Given Prince Paul's health and the deplorable conditions in Romania's infamous prisons, that verdict is equivalent to a death sentence. Prince Paul extends his admiration and appreciation for the sterling and tireless work being carried out by his two defense lawyers in Malta. He also extends his gratitude to Police Inspector Spiteri of the Malta Police and his colleagues for their empathy and their respectful manner dealing with this case. Prince Paul is represented by Dr. Jason Azopardi and Dr. Chris Busieta in the Maltese extradition case. He was represented by Maître Laurent Pasquet, Marinacci and Edward Griffith in the French extradition case, and by Edward Griffith in the Interpol proceeding. I would invite everybody who has a sense of justice to consider the outrageous way in which the Romanian corrupt legal system, that aspect of it that is corrupt, because not all of it is corrupt, is pursuing this matter. And the Romanian state has no right to imprison somebody for entering into a deal with properties that were legally his or he thought were legally his, and for sentencing him to prison for hiring a lawyer that it has now decided was acting lawfully. But Prince Paul should suffer the penalty of a prison term because his lawyer was acting lawfully on his behalf. The whole thing is insanity. And I would hope that the Maltese judiciary respond accordingly. I basically have a lot of hope that this will be turned down, because Malta was a British colony, and Malta has had a good track record where the law is concerned. And hopefully they are not going to cravenly roll over to their corrupt European Union companion in this instance. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like me to be addressing on your behalf. Thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.